I don't think I've ever presented in a venue with a disco ball in my life. When I saw it, I did think I should do a Robbie Williams song or something, but we'll stay well clear of that. I seem to be the odd one out this afternoon as a mining company, so hopefully there's something in the presentation that appeals to you. Beowulf has been listed in Sweden since 2008 on the Oct22 and now the Spotlight market, and we're also listed in London. We're an exploration and development company, and we're most well known in Sweden for our Kallak iron ore project north of the Arctic Circle near Jokkmokk. But as I'll come on to show you, that we've diversified the company over my time as CEO. I joined in 2014, and hopefully there's more than meets the eye. So when investors often think about Beowulf, they just think about our Kallak asset, which has been developed by our 100% owned Swedish subsidiary, Jokkmokk Iron. Kallak is one of Europe's largest undeveloped iron ore deposits, and through test work we have demonstrated that we can produce a very high-grade, market-leading concentrate. We also have diversified in 2016 into Finland, into a company called Graphintech. And there in Finland, we started off very much in the same mode of exploring and seeking to develop graphite deposits. But with the development in the European battery sector, we see the opportunity to move downstream. And then in Kosovo, we invested in 2018 in a company called Vardar Minerals. And there, that's more, again, traditional work of an exploration development company looking for base metals and precious metals. We've got an asset portfolio which is diversified, as you can see, by commodity and by geography, and we have a very opportunistic approach as to how we create value. So not all of these assets we will seek to put in production. Kallak is our main focus at the moment, but we see multiple ways of realizing cash and realizing value from our investments. So moving on to Kallak. One of the key milestones for the company, which I've been working for about 7 years after having joined, was passed this year, which was the award of the exploitation concession in March. And that really brought Kallak back into our focus. While we were waiting to get the permit for Kallak, we looked at investing in other areas of the business. We'll come on to talk about those. Kallak is a project for its time. We've done test work that proves that the concentrate that we can generate is market leading. When we speak to market analysts about other iron ore products that are out there on the market, other iron ore concentrates, the key attributes, the elements you find in our concentrate are such low levels, it makes it very, very appealing to people that want to put it into a steel-making process. In Norrbotten specifically, we have the development of a fossil-free steel industry taking place on our doorstep. In Boden, in the last 2 years, H2 Green Steel has basically come from nowhere to what we see as being a fully permitted, environmentally permitted project, probably this autumn. And then the dynamics around the broader markets, both in the Nordics and outside in Europe and further afield, are all looking for the type of product that we can generate from Kallak. So we have both domestic and export markets to look forward to. And then in terms of its positioning, I've already touched on the proximity of H2 Green Steel in Boden, but we also have the ability, especially in the Nordics, so it's a great place to be able to develop sustainable mining operations, because to coin a phrase, you can effectively plug a mine into the grid. And whereas some of our peers in the industry are looking to reverse engineer to reduce their CO2 footprint, we start with a blank sheet of paper, so we can actually, our ambition is to develop the most sustainable mining operation possible. And then finally, just from infrastructure, again, we're 40 kilometers from the Inlandsbanan, and that gives us access both to going up to Narvik, down to Luleå, and there are other options for export as well. When we actually think about the timeline, we were quite bold this year. When we got the exploitation concession, we said that we want to have the mine in production by 2026. And we do that because the way we have seen authorities and environmental courts permit downstream fossil-free steelmaking or large-scale battery plants, it seems that there's a willingness to permit the downstream, but maybe not such a willingness to permit the upstream. But I'm hoping that that situation is changing. When we talk about Kallak, the project that we got permitted is Kallak North, but the opportunity is much greater than Kallak North. We have the blue circle on the map there is the concession area, and everything else that's green is an exploration permit. So I often talk about 389 million tons of identified iron mineralization. That's if you take the defined resource that we have and then you add the exploration targets to it. And we have a number of different licenses. The ones to the left are all included in 389. And then we also have an additional license to the top right of the map there, which is August Jaeger. And that has a historical resource on it as well. So what we're trying to demonstrate that this project has a real potential for a much longer life than you see when people talk about it, and which we're looking at now, which is 15 years only for Kallak North. It could go on for decades and support the fossil-free steel industry in the Nordics. Moving on to Grafintec in Finland. We acquired Grafintec in 2016. We demonstrated that the company could transact. We created some diversification. We enhanced the capability of the team. Graphite is the material of choice for anodes for at least the next decade, even though you hear about lots of different battery chemistries. The growth in Europe in terms of gigafactories, the amount of anode material required, and the amount of graphite concentrate that's required to make the anodes is rapidly growing, and we're just not ready for it. And throughout the last 3 years, I would say, there's been a focus on secure and sustainable supply chains. And the European Union, the President of the European Union in recent weeks is again talking about security and sustainability. And this issue around an over-reliance on China. China provides about 80%, 90% of the graphite supply in the world. And clearly, I think a lot of downstream companies want to have shorter supply chains, lower carbon CO2 footprints. So we're in a sweet spot in Finland with regard to this. Again, there are 3 key things around Grafintec. We started off with defining a resource at our Aitolampi project. We've got 1.275 million tons of contained graphite. That again is just the start. We have other exploration projects in Finland. We recently announced at I think it was the end of August, beginning of September, a collaboration with Henson Graphite from China. Henson have been in the graphite industry since 1985, and they've also been in the anode space since 2003. So what we're trying to do is to marry up the resource position that we have with somebody who has the knowledge and experience in technology, and to create an exposure to the whole value chain. And we believe that we can do this over the next couple, 2 or 3 years, 3 or 4 years. And both with Kallak and with Grafintec, there is a strong focus on sustainability. We don't have an ESG slide in here, but our ESG policy on the website, and we live and breathe this stuff. And again, we have access to renewable power. The Finns are building wind power capacity like you wouldn't imagine. And so we have the opportunity with any industrial project that we have to also, again, power it by renewables. And we're also very well supported by the Finnish state through Business Finland, who have been channeling money through the EU into the battery value chain. So tremendous collaboration and tremendous support. Moving on to Kosovo. The Kosovan founders presented us with a very intelligent exploration idea in 2018. Around that time, we still didn't have a permit for Kallak. We didn't know if we were ever going to get a permit for Kallak. And operating in the junior mining space, you know, we have to create news flow for you as investors to show that we have bright ideas, we're investing money and creating opportunities. And the Vardar team presented us with 2 exploration licenses, Mitrovica and Viti. I will only talk to you about Mitrovica. We've had 2 announcements out in recent weeks. The geologists, when they walk over Mitrovica, find metal everywhere. If you're doing soil sampling, if you're doing picking up rocks, they get very excited by everything that they see, both horizontally and vertically. I come from a mining and an operations background. I only really get excited when you tell me that I can dig it up and actually make a mine out of it. But what we are seeing from the work that we have done is all the signs to keep moving to the next stage of investment. And so far, we've invested £3.1 million, and we own just almost 60% of the company. And the 2 announcements that we've come out in recent weeks are about this discovery of a large polymetallic epithermal system. I won't go into the geological definition of what that actually means in practice, but the geologists again get very excited about it, and lots of exploration targets, both base metals and precious metals. Within this whole system, we have an operating mine next door called Stan Turk. So we are looking at a very large picture and a district potential. And from our perspective, what makes this really exciting is the state-of-art exploration technology methods that the Vardar team are using, both physically in the ground and then through different technologies that they're applying, but then when they come to interpret what it is that the exploration results are showing them. And I apologize for this slide. I am not going to read all the information on it to you, but what I'm trying to impress on you is the depth of technical work that's taking place to try and understand exactly what we're looking at here. What we've said with our recent announcements is that we haven't hit economic grades yet. We're building out the picture, but this latest announcement that we did is looking at what we have in Kosovo and comparing it to a very similar deposit being mined in Bulgaria by Dundee Precious Metals. This is how the mining industry works. You kind of think, well, this can't be the only mining asset that looks like this in the world. If the geology is the same in several locations, you can do comparisons. And this is what the Vardar team has been doing to show us where we should be drilling next. And that's the next stage of work there. So just finishing off on the roadmap, what we're doing with Jokkmokk at the moment is completing a scoping study. That's the next technical study that we do, and we're hoping to complete that by the end of this year and then rapidly move straight into a pre-feasibility study. We are actively working through work streams that support making an environmental permit application next year. And we're very lateral thinkers, so we're continually thinking about who might be potential partners to join us on taking Kallak into production. And as I touched on, the 389 million tons, there's a focus on how can we add to the mineral resource that we've defined in Kallak North by looking at Kallak South and drilling the exploration target there. With Graphin there's a real focus, given our recent partnership with Henson Graphite, is how we actually put that into a physical downstream project and build an anode materials plant. So that's where our energies are going now. And again, it's continued exploration. We've been looking around Aitolampi just recently. And we're also, in terms of the sustainable development story, focused on how we can generate circular economy feedstocks. And there are a variety of opportunities that we see where we can take both recycled materials and natural materials to make anodes. And finally, what we're looking at with Vardar now is a drill program either at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And then dependent on that, it may be a case of there are multiple options available to the company, either to continue to invest, to seek a third party, or if we've got enough critical mass around the business to spin the company out. Thank you very much.
Time for questions. The concession of Kallak is obviously a major event. Can you further elaborate what this means for you?
I think, well, for me personally, it was 7 years of work that we finally got the concession, and all it took really was a change in government. So it was a validation actually of the company's preparation of the Kallak application, because when the decision came through, the application was found to be good, and all that really shifted the needle was a change in the composition of the government and positive statements by the Prime Minister and the new minister. For the company, it brings Kallak right back into focus. And that's why what I didn't mention in the presentation is one of the first things we did in the summer was we strengthened the Swedish leadership of the company. Ola Sangborg joined as the CEO of Jokkmokk Iron. That was tremendous. It brings diversity to the senior management team, which I say it to most people. I'm sick to death of working in a white Anglo-Saxon male industry. So I was very privileged to have gone to London Business School, which had great diversity. So Ula came on board. We then raised capital, and then we got stuck straight into the scoping study. So really, the momentum went up a tremendous amount when the concession came through.
I have noticed in the political climate that the EU more often talks about that it wants to be more independent when it comes to natural resources, and Sweden and the Nordics as well. Is that something that can help you moving on?
Yeah, I think the drivers are there from an EU perspective are all in our favour. Clearly, the whole of Europe is going through this transition to a green economy, the demand for green infrastructure, the need for primary raw material supply, because there isn't enough metal in the circular economy. I think the slight disconnect is that you have these big strategic aims of the EU around security and sustainability, but then you have sovereign legislation and sovereign regulation, which then controls permitting. And what we have found, my direct experience, is that these processes take far too long. And again, using the Kallak case as a good example, all the work had been done for years, and yet we still get the permit. And what proved to be the obstacle to getting the permit was politics.
How is Beowulf as an investment? How do you want to sell the case, and when do you think that you will start to make profit?
It's going to sound really bad, this. But when you invest in Beowulf, you actually get 3 businesses in one. So it's like, the English expression is, what is it, bog off, buy one, get one free. There's been a sequence of, there's reasons why we have 3 companies in one. And there's been sequential development. While we hadn't got the Kallak permit, we had to create some diversification. And what we found is all of these businesses now are positioned very nicely in terms of the general drivers around green transition in response to climate emergency. So again, the Kallak decision has brought to focus for us as a management team, okay, the financial modeling. So that's what's taking place with the Kallak project at the moment, the scoping study, financial modeling. And similarly with the Graphintech business, it's around let's actually put some meat on the bones of what this is as a business rather than just doing more exploration. Geologists get very excited about exploration. I too get excited about exploration, but I'm more excited about production and being paid for it.
Peter from Kalkyl, do you have questions for Kurt?
Thank you, Albin. Yes, I have some questions, and thank you for the great presentation as well, Kurt. So my first question is, you have estimated that about 389 million tons of iron ore are located in the Kallak region. And this is obviously an important region for you. So how sure can you be of this estimation, and can you explain the process behind your estimations?
Yeah, so when we define that, we don't define it as iron ore, it's iron mineralization. So the classified resource, the industry bodies that allow competent persons to actually say this is a certain amount of iron ore in a certain deposit, and this is the amount of work enables you to raise the classification to a higher degree of certainty. So with Kallak North, we have a much higher degree of certainty, and we have some resource around Kallak South, but then there's an exploration target. So when you take the exploration target and you add it to the mineral resource, that's when you get the 389 million tons. But there's a lot of work to be done around the exploration targets to bring them into what would be a resource and then eventually into a mining plan. Now, with Kallak North, we say it's 15 years only, but when you put your first permit application in, you don't drill every last piece of iron ore that you think is out there to create some mega project. Kiruna did not start with a 100-year mine plan. Kiruna probably started with a 15-year mine plan. And over time, as they got into business, then you start to do your exploration and you drill, you prove up resource, you convert it into reserve, and then you build it into your mining plan. And you go year after year. So what we're trying to give confidence to the downstream is that there's a lot more potential than what we have with our initial project, and then that can support the secure supply to fossil-free steelmaking projects that are being developed at the moment.
Thank you. And the insider ownership in Beowulf is arguably low at approximately 1.5% of the company. Do you have any plan or intention of increasing the amount of insider ownership to increase the alignment regarding the incentives between the management and the shareholders?
Yeah, we announced a long-term incentive plan in the summer this year. as a small company and a relatively small company and a relatively small team, remuneration is often thought as an afterthought. We've got lots of other things to be doing, and we're trying to build it into as being a more systematic process. I've never sold a Beowulf share. I'm significantly invested in this company, even though from a percentage standpoint, it doesn't show that much. But even when I joined the company in 2014, my salary was benchmarked as CEO at the lowest quartile for comparable CEOs, and then I took a 30% salary sacrifice, which was converted into equity. Back in 2015, if anybody cares to remember, the company was worth less than 50 million SEK on Oct22, and was financially distressed. So very much the first year of the company was a lot of sleepless nights and a few nightmares, and it was a turnaround in actual fact. And I think, I never thought it would take 7 years to get the Kallak concession, but I'm doing a very good job of not answering your question. But what I'm trying to show is that we invested all the way through. So yeah, incentive plans remain a firm part of how we align management and shareholder interests.
Love that answer, thank you. And during the coming years, you have some permits that will expire. What is the likelihood of gaining new permits for these locations? And can you explain the rationale for decision makers behind giving Beowulf new permits?
Our team is very focused on permit renewals. It's kind of like a bureaucratic thing to get exploration permits renewed. We've churned permits through the company. We've always, during my time in the company, every permit we've applied for, we've got, and permit renewals. So it's something we pay great attention to. We make sure that we're meeting all the requirements of being able to renew a permit, including investment in different prospects. So it's not something that I put as a high-risk factor when we're looking at all the risks that the company is facing.
So very big likelihood, in other words, of getting new ones. Yeah. So to summarize the investment case, the company has no current revenue source and a history of operating losses. However, the demand for and the extraction of iron ore and other minerals has increased rapidly during the last decades. In other words, the major market trends speak for Beowulf, but it's difficult to determine when they will start generating revenue and cash flow. That being said, we believe Beowulf has a high upside potential, but the timing is harder to estimate, which could lead to more dilution for existing shareholders. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Albin.
Thank you, Kurt, Budge.
Thank you.